Hello, I'm Mark Cerny, or as you might know me, the stepfather of PlayStation. Today I will be giving you an exclusive preview of what to expect with the PlayStation 6. Before we do, I would like to apologize to anyone who purchased a PS5 Pro. As many of our fans with a keen eye pointed out, the PSSR upscaling technology we introduced in PS5 Pro would be a core pillar of our next generation console. Here's the catch. The PS5 Pro doesn't actually exist. If you bought one, you actually just sent us money to fund our development of an upscaling technology that actually does something. Again, my apologies for the confusion. The PS5 is a massive success, but Sony is only winning the generation on a technicality. With Xbox in freefall and Nintendo in their own corner, PlayStation is left as the default console for most people. There are mounting issues, however. The one I want to highlight is the one that you've likely heard already. PS5 has no games. While the output of exclusive games has been slow, the bigger issue for me is the PC releases for the first-party games. I get so frustrated with this because the same people who repeat the no games mantra always celebrate when a PS game is ported to PC. So which is it? The PS5 having games means that they don't come to PC in 6 months. Many people hate the very concept of exclusives, but soon that's going to be the only reason consoles are even viable in the first place. Think about it. I've seen people say they want to ditch their PS5 for a Steam machine, which is less powerful and almost guaranteed to cost more. Whether Sony wants to admit it or not, this is a problem for PlayStation as a brand, and nobody's talking about it. This is important because exclusivity breeds competition. Now that PCs have gotten more user-friendly with support for TV and controllers, consoles have to compete with games and value, being more affordable than a good PC and bringing you exciting games you can't have anywhere else. Also, if PCs supplant consoles, then you can say goodbye to physical media, which everybody has just started to realize the importance of now that it's probably too late. Also, the length of game development is getting too long and expensive. That is an industry-wide issue that needs to be addressed. Perhaps AI could be used in an actually smart way to optimize the more tedious and repetitive parts of development, but I'm not a game dev, so I couldn't tell you what that looks like. Maybe also focusing on making smaller games that you can put out more frequently in between the bigger games would help to keep people engaged. Astrobot is the perfect example. It only took 3 years to develop, it's still a PS5 exclusive to this day, and it won Game of the Year. Sony needs to remember this going into the next gen. Keeping costs down for the hardware is also a concern, or at least it should be. Leaks indicate that Sony wants to keep the next gen relatively affordable, so not picking up where PS5 Pro left off. I'm also no expert in that area, but I will say that the current RAM shortages aren't likely to affect PS6 pricing even if it still launches next year. These things can change quickly, and from what I understand, Sony has channels to get RAM which aren't affected by the shortage on the consumer end. Sony can also be intentional about keeping production costs low in other areas, enough to the point where they don't have to worry about taking too big a loss on the hardware. So these are the concerns going into the PS6 generation. Now I'd like to go over what we do know about PS6 and what I think their strategy for the next gen should be. I'm very excited to reveal our plans for PS6 and give you a first look at the technology behind the platform. There will not just be one PS6, but two. A console and a handheld. Both are powered by their own unique semi-custom AMD system. Blah, 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 blah. Thanks, Mark. Yeah, I'll take it from here. So yes, a console and a handheld. From what we know, the handheld is aiming to be powerful enough to play PS5 and even new PS6 games, albeit scaled down. This is likely the reasoning behind the power saver mode that Sony is adding to PS5 games. I'm sure it pleases the Illuminati as well, but running games at a lower power consumption is going to be a prerequisite for ensuring compatibility with this handheld console.
So they are prepping the low power mode as a fallback in case a game doesn't get patched to work on the handheld.
It will support SSDs and micro SD cards, much like the Steam Deck, and leaks indicated it will even have a docking station as well. This is where I have questions. Well, one question actually. Will this dock support the detachable disk drive? For context, leaks mention that the PS6 console will have a detachable disk drive, much like the PS5 Slim and Pro, so Sony isn't killing physical games with next gen. If you're giving this handheld a dock, you're positioning that combo as the budget PS6 experience. You will have people who avoid the PS6 console altogether in favor of that. So if you can use it as a home console, can the dock support the detachable disk drive to be able to play your PS6, 5, and 4 games, at least while connected to the TV? I really hope so. Perhaps the dock could even have a way of syncing with the console so you could play disc-based games away from the TV. Barring that, it would be nice if the dock came with an extra SSD slot to store the disc-based games on. Regardless of the logistics of it, the handheld is a smart business move on Sony's part, even setting aside new PS6 games. For someone like me with a large digital PlayStation library, a handheld that can play that alone is instantly appealing. There was also speculation by Tom from Moore's Law's Dead that Sony could use the PS6 handheld SoC and turn it into a PS6 Series S type console to give a budget option for next gen.
And I say devices because it wouldn't surprise me if there's a PS6S that was basically just the handheld, but you know, a brick that a little hockey puck you plug into your TV. because that would be cheaper to manufacture probably than the PS5. I believe that would be pretty smart for them to do that, to finally get the PS4 people to upgrade. So I suspect something like that might happen, but I don't have proof of the PS success yet, to be clear.
However, if the dock with the handheld is cheap enough and it supports the disk drive, that might negate the need for such a release. Perhaps it could be an option later on in the generation. As far as release timing, leaks indicate that Sony is planning for manufacture in summer 2027 and a release in holiday 2027. I already talked about how the current shortages might affect the price, but now many online are just saying they want Sony to delay the PS6 into the next decade. I wouldn't go that far, just because the design of the system is already locked in and it's a sunk cost for Sony the longer they sit on it. They could very well still delay the launch, but I could see it being delayed by a year as opposed to 3 or 4.
Quarter 2 of 2027, which again, I've seen this in documents. Quarter 2 2027, that's the contract. That's when they're supposed to start manufacturing PlayStation 6s on TSMC 3nm node. This thing was designed years ago. This thing was set in stone years ago, and it cost tens of millions of dollars. It costs them more money to delay it than it does to pay extra for RAM.
If the console is delayed, I could still see the handheld launching in 2027 to act as a stopgap, while Sony waits for the right time to launch the PS6. I imagine they want to give the handheld room to breathe, so giving it a year to itself alongside the PS5 can maximize sales, as opposed to getting lost in the shuffle of next gen. In this way, it would act very similar to the Vita when it was released at the tail end of the PS3 cycle, and then heavily promoted alongside PS4 once that was ready. In that case, the handheld isn't branded as part of the PS6 line, but rather its own separate category. Then, Sony could launch the PS6 and the PS6S using the handheld's SoC in holiday 2028. Throw the handheld back in there, possibly with a minor hardware refresh, maybe you don't need the dock in that case. And the PlayStation lineup advertises the wide variety of options and invites you to choose how you will play next. Wait, that's not right. The wrong line. Up until now, I've talked about everything surrounding the PS6, but not much about the console itself. The biggest reason is that the PS6 is the least interesting part of this equation. What do we know about the PS6? Well, it has a more powerful semi-custom SoC from AMD. It is improving on the PSSR as well as ray tracing up to a more modern RDNA 5 GPU design. The basic target is probably games running at 4K up to 120 FPS. There are AI capabilities mentioned, but not a specific application for them, rather just different ways they could be used in games.
Imagine if when you ran into an NPC in the Elder Scrolls 6, all you had to do to converse with them was press the mic button on your controller, talk, and then that NPC understood you, and you weren't required to wade through a discussion tree with limited options. What if when you threw and detonated a grenade in Battlefield 7, the grenade's explosion wasn't copy and pasted from a folder, but what if the explosion was actually instantly approximated by what's going on around it, and therefore was far more dynamic looking and always different based on how you threw the grenade?
I think the goal for Sony, like I said earlier, will be to get people off the PS4 and make the PS6 an appealing offer for PS5 users as well. I don't imagine the cross-gen period with PS5 will be nearly as long as it was for PS4, as even the handheld aims to improve performance over PS5, so that's where Sony will likely want to point their budget customers. I imagine they want to get everybody on the same page and create a new baseline target for 10 years as the PS4 was before. I'm sure there were more PS4 games that could have come to PS3, but Sony made the PS4 the new standard, and it would be for the next decade. This is why I don't think Sony is going to delay the PS6 for very long. I do think it might be smart to delay by a year or two, but not too much longer, like I said. The main criticism you hear from literally everyone is that it feels like the PS5 generation hasn't even started yet. I think Sony can give an extra year or two with the console, holding off the PS6 launch until 2028 or 29. This will give people more time with the PS5 so they don't feel like Sony is abandoning the console. With that being said, I do think Sony should cut the PS5 cross-gen period short relative to PS4. That will also encourage people to upgrade to PS6, whether it's the handheld, the S, or the main console. Making it cheap and giving it exclusives will also encourage people to upgrade. You want people to upgrade because if they don't, it's a vicious cycle that goes something like this. I have no reason to buy a PS6, so devs will keep supporting PS5, but since there's more support for PS5, there's even less of a reason to buy PS6. If Sony doesn't cut off the PS5, I could see people staying on it for way longer, and I could see the criticisms from the PS5 mounting and getting way worse. You thought there was no reason to buy a PS5. If Sony doesn't give this box exclusives at an affordable price, I could see the PS6 killing PlayStation altogether. On the bright side, sentiment online around the handheld is more positive, so I could see it being a smart way to sneakily get people to upgrade without even realizing it. Before we tie this all together, I do just want to wildly speculate about one more thing. The games. I know, stop the presses. My boldest prediction of all is that the PS6 will have games. Specifically, the games that will be pushed with this new hardware. This is very common for consoles, and I especially love it when the production of a game is inextricably woven into the production and release of new gaming hardware. Games like Super Mario 64, Aperture Desk Job, or Astro's Playroom are what I think of. Whether they're explicitly hardware demos, or if the game itself is such a draw that it advertises the hardware, much like Breath of the Wild or Cyberpunk. With this in mind, I want to figure out what big games Sony will want to push with these new launches. We don't know know any of Sony's actual plans, and whatever planned games they do have are probably already in development, so this will most likely prove to be pointless, but I hope a fun time capsule nonetheless. With all that in mind, I would argue that Sony has two franchises that are best positioned as the faces of PlayStation. Those would be Horizon and Astrobot. Sony is currently in the process of milking the Horizon franchise, but it is still successful. Whatever fatigue exists online has not manifested in poor sales of anything yet, so they will continue to ride that train until there's no track left. It is also useful in a practical sense, because the world of Horizon can be a draw on its own without including Aloy or the central conflicts of the games. It's also a quality found in Half-Life, Portal, and Star Wars, which makes spin-offs lucrative. With the third game still years away, I imagine a Horizon spin-off, potentially by a different studio, could be pushed with the new hardware, much like Call of the Mountain was for PSVR 2. Astrobot is a different story. The breakout hit of the 2024 game made Astrobot the new de facto PlayStation mascot. It gave Sony their own Mario in a way that felt organic, despite starring in a game that is literally an ad for the box you're already playing it on. PlayStation hasn't really done anything to push Astrobot since the game came out, but I believe they are preparing to do just that. It's a little bit of a tough spot because Astro's Playroom was more focused on being a welcome tour for the PS5, so you may disappoint fans if Astro isn't there to greet them when they buy the next box. To make up for this, I believe an Astrobot game of some kind will be a launch title. It won't be a free pack-in, which will be disappointing to fans, but if it's a bigger game that's priced at $50 to $60, the value will still be there. Now let's get more specific. Here's what I think these games should be and which console they should be tied to. To start with the PlayStation handheld in 2027, it will launch alongside a short Horizon shooting gallery type game. This is more tech demo territory, even though it's done organically, just showing off the controls and the form factor without being too in your face about it. I see Aperture Desk Job as the template for this game, but it would be longer. A better comparison might actually be the Link's Crossbow Training, where the game has replayability with high scores and several challenge modes. The game will be bundled in with the handheld, and it will always come with it, so you don't have to worry about buying the right SKU for it. It can release on PS5 as well and be a smaller $10 to $20 experience on its own. My guess is that the PlayStation Store will have an indicator badge to show which games will support the handheld, much like Steam's Deck Verified system. Flash forward to holiday 2028, and the big launch game for the PS6 is Astro Kart. Yes, it's a common fan concept, but here's why I think it's a good idea. I think Team Asobi wants to branch out with Astrobot and do something a little bit different so that way their next traditional platformer is a massive tentpole release. A racing game could also possibly be developed in less time and continue to be updated with new characters, vehicles, and maps, much like Mario Kart or even the original Astrobot was. This will be the big draw for launch, and the game will also be verified for the handheld, so everybody on PlayStation will get the game at the same time. Maybe they'll put it on PS5, maybe not, I don't know. Like I said, there will be some disappointment from fans that there's no free Astrobot game to show them around, but I actually think Sony could still find a way around this. Remember how I said that the AI features of the PS6 can be used in different ways? Well, Sony had a patent come out for an AI companion that helps struggling players. Just imagine that AI buddy is a personal Astrobot. Imagine if each PS6 user could customize their own little Astrobot and then he can show you around the new console. This would include the S version of the console, and even the handheld could receive a firmware update to include this functionality at the same time. It could be like PlayStation's version of the Mii's, but more helpful. And they would replace the seldom used voice assistant on PS5. You just ask your Astrobot a question and they'll help you figure it out. I imagine it could be enabled to help with games as well, but they would have to keep that optional. One of the criticisms I've heard about the upcoming PS6 is that there isn't anything appealing about it. People assume that it will just be more powerful but have nothing else to offer, encouraging them to stay on PS5 or even PS4. To that I say, do you really think Mark Cerny is out of ideas? Do you really think the guy that came up with 3D audio can't think of new features to make this console appealing, even if you already have a PS5? I just proposed a custom AI assistant based on Astrobot, and I'm just spitballing. Do you really think Sony has no idea how to market their next console? Like, I suppose that remains to be seen based on how many people they can get to buy the PS6, but I am optimistic, especially if they have a little bit of extra time to flesh these ideas out. Now,
this is where the fun begins.
I'm going to go through the timeline of these events and briefly elaborate on how this all plays out. The future of PlayStation begins right now. In summer 2026, we will start to hear rumors about dev kits being sent to first-party studios. Throughout the rest of the year, more and more games will support the Power Saver mode, as it has already been mandated by Sony. By the end of 2026, we will see leaked pictures of the dev kit, possibly one for the handheld as well. In early 2027, we will find out what the big PS5 exclusives are for the rest of the year. In mid-2027, Sony will announce the PlayStation handheld. What will they call it? Well, I don't think they want to give it a number, even though it will surpass the PS5. I also don't think they want to reuse Portable or Vita, so I could see it being named a word, something in line with the modern PC handhelds. Let's go with PlayStation Rover. I know that sounds dumb, but the SoC is codenamed Camus, which is sort of like the hunting dog relative to Orion the Hunter, which is the codename for the PS6 SoC. It'll also sound less dumb if it turns out to be true. Maybe. Probably not. PlayStation Rover will be marketed as a PS5 to go, and it will be seen as a way that Sony can keep up customer engagement without starting the next gen. The PlayStation Store will receive an update to include Rover compatibility. The Power Saver badge will be bundled in with Rover verification. It will also launch with a new Horizon game packed in. Called Horizon Trial of the Cauldron, it will be a simple shooting gallery that acts as a good hardware showcase. The game will also come to PS5 at the same time. The PlayStation Rover will launch for $349.99. I know that sounds like a pipe dream, but I imagine Sony wants to undercut Nintendo for the Switch too. It's also important to remember that they'll be positioning this as an entry point into PlayStation or a separate pillar. This isn't the next-gen experience yet. So pricing it below the cheapest PS5, which at this point will still be the refurbished or used launch model, it will ensure an early attach rate. In early 2028, around March, Sony will announce a docking station for the Rover. It might be tacked on the end of a state of play or on its own short video or blog post. The dock will support an extra SSD slot as well as the PS5's detachable disk drive. The whole package of the docked Rover with the disk drive will be closer to the cost of the base PS5, but I'm sure the novelty will make up for it. I'm going to lock in my prediction that in summer 2028, Sony will announce the PlayStation 6 home console and launch in holiday 2028. During the announcement, we will see the reveal for several games, and about half of them will be PS6 only, with the other half also coming to PS5. This will signal a shorter cross-gen period than the PS4 got. I'm sure the games skipping PS5 will be touted as utilizing the AI features that require the power of the PS6. How true that is, especially within the first couple years, will be up for debate. Some people might not like it, but the PS6 exclusive games will be enough to get most people excited enough to upgrade within the first year or two of launch. And the last big game announced during the PS6 reveal will be Astro Kart. Along with this announcement, Sony will reveal the PS6 Lite, the handheld's SoC in a box. The Rover makes a surprise appearance as well with the reveal of a hardware refresh, maybe with an OLED screen. Either in this reveal or another event, Sony will detail the software of PS6 with your own custom Astrobot AI assistant. It can help with games and system optimizations. It will also be announced that the refresh of the Rover will launch with the PS6's system software. Not to worry though, as current Rover owners will get the updated UI later next year. And just like that, the PS6 is revealed with 3 different pillars: a home console, a handheld that runs the same games, and the Lite, which gives you a next-gen experience at last-gen prices. The PlayStation 6 launches at $549.99, the Lite at $349.99, and the Rover OLED at $449.99. The disc drive will be sold separately, of course. At $80, it raises the total cost, but at most hovers around the PS5 pricing. Maybe the Rover OLED will come with a dock bundled in, but not the disc drive to ease the price hike. Let me emphasize that this is what I think Sony should do. This is also what I would like them to do, and what I would do if I was in charge. Obviously, I'm not. If you get anything from this little thought experiment, it should not be to just mindlessly consume whatever Sony gives you. Rather, I'm just outlining the optimistic approach for how Sony could handle the PS6. So that is my prediction.